She called me a burden. That's what my daughter-in-law said, clear as day, standing in my own kitchen, holding the same porcelain cup I'd had since my wedding. Her words didn't come out in anger. No, they slid out soft like butter on a hot knife, as if she had practiced them before. A burden. I remember the clinking of the teaspoon against the rim, the way sunlight cut across the floor tiles, and how the smell of burnt toast filled the silence between us. She didn't even look at me when she said it, just sipped her tea and stared at the window, her reflection caught between the glass and the morning light. It wasn't what she said that broke me, it was how easily she said it. I didn't respond right away. I just stood there with my hands wrapped around the hem of my cardigan, feeling the air thicken. My son, Daniel, wasn't home yet. He was at work as usual. I wondered if he knew how she felt about me. I wondered if he'd ever asked. But I didn't cry. Not that day. Because something inside me, something quiet and old, told me that this wasn't the end. No, this was the beginning of something I hadn't yet seen coming. Before all that, life was simple. Or at least, it looked that way from the outside. After my husband passed 3 years ago, Daniel insisted I move in with him and his wife, Claire. He said, "You shouldn't be alone, Mom. We have space. It'll be good for everyone." And it was at first. Their house was lovely. 2 stories with white shutters and a garden that always smelled of mint and lavender. Claire kept everything spotless, down to the cushions aligned on the sofa and the glass bowls of lemons she liked to keep on the counter for aesthetic, as she put it. I tried to help out wherever I could. I cooked dinner most nights, made their lunches, watered the plants. I even helped with their laundry, folding everything neatly the way Daniel liked it as a boy. Socks rolled in pairs, shirts ironed flat. He used to come home tired, loosen his tie, and kiss my forehead. "You spoil us, Mom," he'd laugh. And I'd smile, because it felt good to be needed again. Claire and I, we were never close, but I tried. I really did. I complimented her on her cooking, though her idea of dinner was quinoa and kale. I offered to run errands, to give her time for herself. Some days she'd say thank you. Others, she'd just nod and walk away. It's strange how silence can fill a house louder than words. I'd sit by the window sometimes, crocheting or watching the neighbors walk their dogs, and I'd hear them, Claire and Daniel, talking in the next room. Her voice always sounded like it was just on the edge of complaint. His patient but tired. Still, I didn't want to cause trouble. I told myself, she's young. Marriage is hard. Give her time. I suppose I wanted to believe that kindness would be enough. On Sundays, we had breakfast together. Pancakes, fruit, coffee, the kind of small ritual that holds a family together. But lately, Claire had started skipping those mornings. She'd stay upstairs, saying she was catching up on work, though I'd sometimes hear the sound of a hairdryer instead. Daniel noticed, but he didn't say much. He'd just smile at me tiredly and say, "She's been stressed lately. Work's been rough." And I'd nod, because that's what mothers do. We nod and we understand, even when we don't. I tried to stay out of their way. I really did, but the house was only so big, and sometimes I felt like a ghost floating between rooms that didn't belong to me. Still, Daniel was happy, or at least he said he was, and that was enough to keep me going, until the little things started to change. It started small, the kind of things you might miss if you weren't paying attention. One afternoon, I came downstairs to find Claire rearranging the kitchen cabinets. My favorite teacup, the one with a small crackle on the handle, was gone. When I asked her where it was, she said, "Oh, it was chipped. I threw it out. We don't need clutter." Clutter. That word stung, but I swallowed my pride and said nothing. Then came the whispers. Phone calls she'd take in the laundry room, her voice low and hurried. She'd hang up when I walked by. Once I overheard her say, "She's still here. I don't know for how long, but I'll handle it." I told myself she was talking about someone else. Maybe a neighbor, maybe a client, but my heart didn't believe it. I started noticing other things too. Daniel seemed distracted. He'd come home late, glance around the kitchen like something was off, and then ask, "Mom, everything okay between you and Claire?" And I'd lie, with the same smile I'd used on him when he scraped his knee as a child. "Of course, dear. Everything's fine." But it wasn't. One morning, while making breakfast, I found a folder on the counter with a real estate agent's logo printed on it. Inside were photographs of the house, our house, and a list of potential buyers. My stomach dropped. When Claire came down the stairs, I asked, as calmly as I could, "Why are there pictures of the house for sale?" She froze for a second, then smiled. Too wide, too practiced. "Oh, that's nothing. Just something I was looking into for the future. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." The way she said those words made my hands tremble. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the refrigerator hum felt louder than usual. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe, just maybe, Claire had plans that didn't include me. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't want to come between them. But I could feel something changing in the air, something cold and deliberate. And then came the day she called me a burden. The day everything shifted. After that morning, the word burden hung over me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Every sound in that house seemed sharper, every silence longer. I started noticing how Claire's eyes followed me when I walked into a room, the way she glanced at my hands when I picked up a plate or poured tea, as if I might break something just by touching it. She began moving things around the house too. My knitting basket that used to sit by the window was moved to the hall closet. My framed picture of Daniel and me, taken the day he graduated college, disappeared from the mantel. When I asked where it went, she said, "Oh, I thought we could simplify the space." Simplify. Another polite word that meant erase. I thought about leaving. Truly I did. But Daniel, he had such such a gentle heart. He'd been through enough losing his father, and I didn't want to add to his burden. So I stayed, but that house no longer felt like home. One evening, while setting the table for dinner, I overheard them talking in the living room. I hadn't meant to listen. It's just that the sound carried so easily through the walls. She doesn't need to live here forever, Claire was saying. Her voice was low, firm. We can use that room for something else. You said we'd start a family. Daniel sighed. Claire, she's my mother. She doesn't have anywhere else. She could, Claire pressed. There's assisted living nearby. They take care of everything. Meals, laundry, all that. It's better for everyone. Better for everyone, she said. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hands gripping the edge of the table. The plates trembled. Daniel didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, softly, let's not talk about this now. I didn't hear the rest. I walked upstairs, one careful step at a time, my chest tight and my eyes stinging. That night I prayed. Not for strength, not even for peace. I prayed for understanding. Because I couldn't believe that the little girl I had welcomed into my family, the one I'd cooked for, celebrated, defended, could look at me and see nothing but inconvenience. The next morning, I found an envelope on the kitchen counter. It had my name written neatly across the front. Inside was a brochure for a senior living community, complete with a note. Just a thought. They have lovely gardens and 24-hour care. No signature, but I didn't need one. The air left my body all at once. I sat down at the table, staring at that brochure, my hands shaking. The edges crinkled beneath my fingers. There were smiling faces printed across the cover, people my age, laughing in wheelchairs, playing cards. And I thought, is that how she sees me now? Something to be handled, part, taken care of? When Daniel came home that evening, I tried to bring it up gently. Danny, I said, did you know Claire was looking into assisted living for me? His face changed. He rubbed his forehead, like a man too tired to face another storm. Mom, please don't take it the wrong way. She's just worried about you being lonely here when we're busy. Lonely! I laughed quietly, though it didn't feel like laughter. Daniel, I'm not lonely. I'm your mother. I live here with you. He sighed. I know, Mom, but she's just trying to help. Help. He didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to. After that, I stopped setting the table for three. I'd eat alone at the counter, quietly, listening to their muffled conversations in the next room. One afternoon, while Claire was out, I went into the study to look for my sewing kit. Instead, I found another envelope. This one had my name on it too, but it wasn't a brochure. It was a letter. Inside, in Claire's handwriting, were the words, Mrs. Harris, I think it's time you considered what's best for Daniel and me. We're newly married, and it's been hard to grow as a couple with you always here. We've been patient, but it's becoming too much. Please think about making other arrangements soon. Claire. I sat there for a long time, staring at the paper. My heartbeat was slow, heavy, each thought echoing in my ears. Too much. That's what I'd become. A weight pressing down on their marriage. For days, I carried that letter folded in my pocket, feeling its edges dig into my palm whenever I reached for a tissue or a spoon. I didn't tell Daniel. Not yet, because I wanted to believe there was still some misunderstanding, that maybe she'd written it in a moment of frustration. But that belief shattered 2 weeks later. It was a Thursday afternoon. Claire was out again, saying she had errands. I was dusting the hallway when I heard a knock at the door. A man stood there in a navy suit, holding a clipboard. Good afternoon. I'm here to appraise the property before listing, he said with a polite smile. I blinked. Listing? Yes, ma'am. The sale listing. Mrs. Harris confirmed the appointment this morning. I felt the world tilt under me. Mrs. Harris? I asked. He checked his notes. Yes, Claire Harris. I could barely speak. My hands trembled as I told him there must be a mistake. He apologized, said he double-checked, and left. That night, when Claire came home, I waited at the kitchen table. The letter lay in front of me and folded. Claire, I said quietly, why did an appraiser come by today? She froze mid-step, the grocery bag still hanging from her wrist. Then she laughed lightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. Oh, that? I was just getting a sense of the market. Nothing's decided yet. Nothing's decided. I said, you were planning to sell this house. My home. Without telling me or Daniel. Her jaw tightened. It's our home, Mrs. Harris. Daniel and I pay the mortgage. You live here rent-free. You should be grateful. Grateful. I felt something in me crumble, then harden. I see, I said softly. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You've been kind, but this isn't working anymore. You don't belong here. It's time you understood that. The next morning, Daniel found me in the kitchen, staring at a cup of cold tea. Mom, he asked, what's wrong? I looked at him, my son, my only child, and said the hardest words I'd ever spoken. Daniel, I think your wife wants to sell the house and send me away. His eyes widened, disbelief flashing across his face. What? No, that can't be right. Ask her, I whispered. But before you do, look at this. I handed him the letter. He read it in silence, and for the first time since I'd moved in, I saw something change in his eyes. Not confusion, not guilt, but something colder. Resolve. Daniel didn't say much that night. He just folded the letter once, then again, until it was a small, sharp square in his palm. His jaw clenched the way it did when he was a boy trying not to cry. Thank you for showing me this, Mom, he said finally, his voice quiet but steady. I'll take care of it. I wanted to ask what he meant, but he was already walking down the hall toward their bedroom. Their voices rose soon after, muffled at first, then sharper, clearer. You went behind my back, Claire, he said. I was trying to do what's best for us, she snapped. You won't admit it, but she's taking over our lives. We can't even have a dinner alone without her hovering. There was a pause, the sound of something clattering against a dresser. "She's my mother," he said, low but firm. "And I'm your wife," she fired back. "When do I get to come first?" After that, the house fell silent. When Daniel came out, he didn't look at me right away. He just said, "She's going to stay at her sister's for a while. We need space to think." I nodded, though my heart ached for him. "I never wanted to come between you two," I whispered. He sat beside me, exhaling heavily. "You didn't, Mom." She did. I didn't sleep that night. The quiet was too heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. For a few days, things were calm. Too calm. Daniel went to work. I cleaned, cooked, tried to pretend life was normal. But I could feel the storm waiting beyond the silence. On the fourth day, a letter arrived in the mail, addressed to Mrs. Margaret Harris. My hands shook as I tore it open. It was from a law firm. The letter read, "Dear Mrs. Harris, this notice serves to inform you that the property at 148 Brookhaven Lane is under review for transfer of ownership, pending consent from all residents and parties involved." Transfer of ownership. My knees nearly gave out. Claire hadn't stopped her plan. She just moved it forward without Daniel knowing. When he came home, I handed him the letter without a word. He read it once, twice, then looked up, disbelief in his eyes. "She can't do this," he said. "The house is in both our names. She can't make any legal changes without my consent." But then he hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. Unless what?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Unless she forged something, or got advice from someone who told her she could." That night, he made a call. I heard him in the study, speaking in that measured, quiet tone he used at work. "Yes, I'd like to schedule a consultation tomorrow morning, if possible." "Yes, it's regarding joint property ownership." When he hung up, he came to sit beside me. "Mom," he said softly, "I think it's time we get some help from a lawyer." For the first time in weeks, I felt something lift inside me, a faint flicker of hope. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. It was mid-morning, and the sun had just begun to warm the curtains. When I opened the door, a tall man in a gray suit smiled politely. "Mrs. Harris? I'm Michael Patel. Your son asked me to stop by." He had kind eyes and a calm voice, the kind that made you feel safe even before you knew why. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Claire had called me a burden. The irony didn't escape me. Daniel joined us, documents spread out before him. "Mr. Patel," Daniel began, "I need to know if my wife can sell this house without my consent, or my mother's." The lawyer nodded, flipping through the papers. "Well," he said after a moment, "technically, as co-owners, both signatures are required for any sale. Without them, any transaction is invalid. And since your mother is a resident here, she also has occupancy rights under the state's housing protection law." "Meaning?" I asked quietly. "Meaning," he said with a faint smile, "no one can force you out, Mrs. Harris. Not without due process. Not without your consent." Daniel let out a long breath, relief washing over his face. "But Mr. Patel wasn't finished. However," he added, "if she's already taken preliminary steps like contacting an agent or forging your signature, we can file an injunction to halt any sale activity immediately." Daniel nodded. "Do it." He signed the necessary papers right then and there. As I poured Mr. Patel a cup of tea, he smiled. "Don't worry, Mrs. Harris. You're not a burden. You're protected." Those words, I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear them. A week later, Claire returned. She walked in like nothing had happened, heels clicking on the tile floor, her perfume strong enough to sting my eyes. "Where's Daniel?" she asked, setting her bag down. "In the living room," I said. She went in, and within moments, the calm of the morning shattered. "You had no right," she cried. "You embarrassed me." "No, Claire," Daniel said evenly. "You embarrassed yourself. You tried to sell our house behind my back." She folded her arms. "You think you can make me the villain here? I was doing what you wouldn't, taking responsibility." Daniel's voice stayed calm, but there was steel in it. "You called my mother a burden. You tried to take her home away. I won't stand for that." Then he handed her a letter, Mr. Patel's injunction notice. Her eyes widened as she read. "You got a lawyer?" "Yes," he said, "and you'll be hearing from him again if you try anything else." For once, she didn't have an answer. I stood by the doorway, watching as her face went pale, her mouth tightening into something between anger and disbelief. She grabbed her purse and stormed out. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house. I exhaled slowly, my fingers still trembling. Daniel turned to me then, his expression softening. "You're safe now, Mom. Safe." The word felt foreign, like something fragile I hadn't touched in a long time. I nodded, though a part of me still ached. "I never wanted it to come to this," I whispered. "I know," he said, "but it had to." That night, the house was quiet again, but not heavy like before. The silence felt clean, like the air after a storm. I stood at the window, watching the wind ripple through the garden. The world outside hadn't changed, but something in me had. For the first time in months, I felt the faint pulse of peace. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Claire was not the kind of woman who accepted defeat quietly, and in my heart, I sensed she would be back with something else up her sleeve. Claire didn't come back for 3 weeks. At first, the quiet was a relief. Daniel and I fell into a soft rhythm. Simple dinners, slow mornings, evenings spent watching old movies. It almost felt like the years before his marriage, when it was just the two of us against the world. But beneath that comfort, there was unease. Daniel still checked his phone constantly, frowning at texts he didn't show me. I didn't ask. I could guess who they were from. Then one Friday evening, the peace cracked. He came home late, his tie loose, his eyes tired. "Mom," he said quietly. quietly. Claire's filed for separation. I froze mid-motion, the dish towel still in my hand. She said she can't stay in a marriage where she feels second place, he continued, reading from a message on his phone. She also said she's consulting her own attorney about her share of the house. I put the towel down carefully. I'm so sorry, Danny. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. Don't be. Maybe it's for the best. I didn't realize how far she'd gone until all this happened. Still, I could see the heartbreak beneath his calm. That weekend, he barely spoke. He spent hours in the garden, trimming the hedges that Claire used to love, then sitting by the fence staring at nothing. I made soup, brought him tea, tried to give him space. When he finally spoke, it wasn't about her. It was about me. Mom, he said one evening, I'm sorry for what she said about you being a burden. I looked at him and saw the boy I'd raised, the one who used to hold my hand crossing the street, who once told me, you're my favorite person in the world. You don't need to apologize for her, I said softly. Some people only see what others cost them. They never notice what others give. He nodded, eyes glistening. You've given me everything. The next Monday, the doorbell rang again. When I opened it, Claire was standing there, sunglasses perched on her head, a folder clutched tightly to her chest. Is Daniel home? She asked flatly. Her voice was steady, but there was something brittle underneath, like glass about to crack. He's at work, I replied. Would you like to leave a message? She hesitated, then stepped inside anyway, brushing past me. The scent of her perfume hit me again, sharp, expensive, too strong. Mrs. Harris, she said, turning to face me. I didn't come to argue. I came to make something clear. I folded my hands, keeping my voice calm. All right, I know what you think of me, she began. And maybe I deserve some of it, but I did what I did because I felt trapped. This house, it was supposed to be a new start for us. Then you moved in, and everything changed. I didn't respond. She pressed on, her voice trembling now. Daniel stopped seeing me, stopped talking to me the same way. I felt invisible, and you became his whole world again. Her words hung in the air. For the first time, I saw not malice, but fear. Claire, I said quietly, I never wanted to replace you. I only wanted to be part of your family. You could have told me how you felt. She laughed bitterly. And what would that change? You'd still be here. He'd still choose you. I looked at her, this young woman who had married my son with all the right promises and now stood before me, hollowed out by resentment. You and I both wanted love, I said gently. But love doesn't grow where blame is planted. Her jaw clenched. You think you're so wise, don't you? Always the same. I'm far from that, I replied. But I do know that peace doesn't come from pushing people away. She looked down then, her eyes wet but angry. It's too late for peace. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. You'll regret this, she said softly. You think that lawyer can protect you forever? You'll see. And then she was gone. The echo of her heels faded down the porch steps, but her words stayed long after. The next week, letters started arriving. Legal documents, notices, requests for property division. Mr. Patel reviewed each one carefully, assuring us they were mostly empty threats. Still, each envelope felt like a reminder of the life that had cracked open. Then one morning, the story spilled beyond our walls. A neighbor stopped me at the mailbox, her tone careful, sympathetic. I heard Claire's been talking to people, saying you forced her out, that you and Daniel ganged up on her. My chest tightened. She said that. The neighbor nodded. She's telling folks she was trying to protect Daniel from you, that you're controlling. I smiled faintly, though it burned inside. Well, people will believe what they want. When Daniel came home, I told him. He rubbed his temples, muttering, of course she's doing this. She always needs someone to blame. But he didn't let it go on long. He went to see her the next day. When he came back, his expression was calm but final. She's moving out of town, he said, to stay with her sister. She wanted to apologize in her own way. What does that mean? I asked. He sighed. She said she was sorry for how things ended, but she still thinks you never wanted us to work. I nodded slowly. Let her believe what she needs to. Sometimes that's all people can live with. He reached over and took my hand. You still want to stay here, right? I smiled, though tears blurred my vision. This house isn't just walls, Daniel. It's the life your father built for us. I want to keep that memory alive. He squeezed my hand gently. Then we'll do it together. Months passed. The seasons shifted. The lavender in the garden began to bloom again, just like it had when I first moved in. Daniel seemed lighter, freer. He laughed more. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch at dusk, listening to the crickets, sharing quiet stories from the past. He didn't talk about Claire much after that, and I didn't ask. Some silences deserve respect. Every now and then, I'd find an old photo of her tucked in a drawer, or a perfume bottle left behind. I didn't throw them away. I just placed them in a box, tied with a ribbon, and stored it in the attic. Not out of bitterness, but because even painful chapters deserve to be kept, not erased. Life became gentle again. Not perfect, but peaceful. And as the months rolled on, I realized something. Maybe being called a burden wasn't the insult I'd once thought it was. Maybe it just meant I was heavy with love that some people didn't know how to carry. But peace has a way of testing you when you least expect it. Because one quiet morning, the phone rang, and when I picked up, it was the lawyer again. Mrs. Harris, he said gently, I thought you should know. Claire's contesting the ownership again. But this time, it's not just about the house. I felt my breath catch. Then what is it about? He paused. It seems she's trying to claim part of your late husband's estate. The one that funded the down payment on this home. The mug in my hand trembled slightly. I see, I said softly. This wasn't over after all. And I knew, deep in my bones, that I would have to fight, not just for a house, but for the life I'd spent decades building. When I hung up the phone, the house felt different. Still quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It was the silence that comes before thunder. Daniel came downstairs, still in his work clothes, his tie undone. He noticed my face immediately. Mom, what's wrong? I handed him the phone, my voice steady but low. It's Mr. Patel. He said Claire's contesting your father's estate. His eyes widened. She can't do that. That money was Dad's. He left it to you. Yes, I said softly, but the down payment came from it. She'll argue it was shared property. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering something under his breath. She won't stop until there's nothing left to fight over. I watched him pace the floor, the same way his father used to when something weighed heavy on his mind. Daniel, I said gently, sit down. He did. Listen to me, I continued. I don't want this house to become another battleground. If it means letting go of a little to keep our peace, then maybe that's worth it. He shook his head. No, Mom, you've already given enough. You moved in with us, tried to make this work, and she treated you like... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. She doesn't get to rewrite history. I smiled faintly. History has a way of correcting itself, eventually, but sometimes it takes a little help. 2 days later, we met with Mr. Patel again. His office smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. Papers were stacked neatly on his desk, and a faint hum of traffic drifted through the window. He greeted us warmly. I've reviewed the case, he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Claire's claim won't hold. The estate was settled years ago. The funds were yours exclusively before marriage. I exhaled, the weight easing slightly from my shoulders. However, he added, she's hired an aggressive attorney. They're threatening to bring up emotional distress and dependency claims, trying to paint your mother as manipulative. Daniel's hand balled into a fist. That's ridiculous. It is, Mr. Patel agreed, but it's a common tactic. They're hoping you'll settle out of exhaustion. He looked at me then, his expression kind. Mrs. Harris, you have every right to stand your ground, but if you choose to end this peacefully, I can help draft terms that protect you and Daniel. I sat quietly for a moment, my fingers tracing the edge of the folder. Then I said, Mr. Patel, I don't want revenge. I just want her to stop taking pieces of us. He nodded. Then let's make that happen. A week later, both parties met at the law office. I hadn't expected to see Claire again so soon. She arrived early, dressed sharply, her expression unreadable. Her lawyer, a tall man with a hard smile, sat beside her. Daniel and I entered quietly. I noticed how she avoided my gaze. The meeting began with the formalities, dates, names, property details, but it didn't take long before the words grew heavy. Her lawyer leaned forward. Our client believes Mrs. Harris has exercised emotional influence over her son to the detriment of his marriage. She also contributed to marital discord and limited my client's access to shared assets. Daniel's eyes flashed. You're calling my mother manipulative? She cooked our meals, helped pay the bills, took care of his house. Claire's lips tightened, but she didn't speak. Mr. Patel remained calm. We have documented evidence, he said evenly, that Mrs. Harris's financial contributions came from her late husband's estate predating the marriage, and that Mrs. Claire Harris attempted to sell the property without consent, a clear breach of joint ownership law. He slid a copy of the injunction notice across the table. The other lawyer's jaw twitched. Claire's eyes darted down at the paper, then at me. You don't have to make me the villain, she murmured. I just wanted my life back. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I didn't see the angry young woman from before. I saw someone lost, desperate to feel seen. You could have had your life, I said softly. All you had to do was share it. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Perhaps we should move to settlement terms. Mr. Patel leaned back, his voice calm but firm. Our proposal is simple. Claire withdraws all claims on the estate and property. In return, Daniel agrees to a fair separation of marital assets, personal accounts, not the house. Both parties sign a mutual non-disparagement clause. No more public accusations. Claire glanced at her lawyer, who whispered something in her ear. After a long silence, she nodded. Fine. I don't know why, but my heart ached for her in that moment. Not out of pity, but out of recognition. Because sometimes losing is the only way some people learn who they are. The papers were signed that same week. It was over. Legally, at least. Word spread through the neighborhood. People stopped whispering. Some even came by to apologize for believing the rumors. Don't worry, I'd say with a small smile. Time tells the truth better than people ever can. One afternoon, while I was tending to the garden, Daniel joined me. He watched me snip a few lavender stems and said quietly, she called today. I looked at Claire. He nodded. She said she's leaving town for good, moving to another state. She wanted to say she's sorry. I waited, then asked softly, do you believe her? He paused. I think she meant it in her own way. That evening, I found a small envelope slid through the mail slot. Inside was a single folded note. Mrs. Harris, I was wrong about you. Maybe I was angry at the wrong things. I hope you and Daniel find peace. Claire. I sat down at the kitchen table, holding that note between my hands. The same table where she'd once called me a burden. Funny how life circles back like that. I didn't cry, but my chest felt heavy in that soft, quiet way that comes after a long storm. The kind that leaves you both tired and grateful. Months turned into a year. Daniel found peace again, little by little. He started volunteering at a community center, helping young couples with financial planning. A strange kind of poetry, considering what we'd been through. As for me, I planted a new row of lavender by the fence. The garden became my sanctuary February again. I'd sit there in the evenings, sipping tea, watching the light fade from gold to blue. Sometimes I think of Claire, not with anger, but with a quiet wish that she found a place to rest too. One day, Daniel came outside holding a letter. Mr. Patel says the final paperwork's cleared. The house is officially ours. Ours, I repeated, smiling. Your father would have liked that. He grinned. He would have said, took you long enough. We both laughed, and for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like laughter was borrowed from somewhere else. It was ours again. That night, I wrote a note of my own. Not to send, just to remind myself. Sometimes people will call you a burden because they can't see the weight of the love you carry. Carry it anyway. The next morning, as sunlight filled the kitchen, I made breakfast for two. Pancakes, just the way Daniel liked them. And for the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like home again. You know, sometimes people don't see the quiet work we do. The meals cooked, the tears swallowed, the love poured out like water into hands that never stay still long enough to hold it. They call it meddling, or being overbearing, or, like she said to me, being a burden. But what they don't understand is that love, the kind that comes from years of sacrifice and faith, can feel heavy only because it's real. I've learned that the ones who call you a burden are often the ones who've never known what it feels like to be carried. When the lawyer arrived, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. Peace for my son. Peace for the home my husband built. Peace for myself. After all those years of trying to be small enough to fit into someone else's comfort. And when peace finally came, it wasn't loud or triumphant. It came in the quiet hum of the refrigerator, in the soft creak of the garden chair, in the simple act of watching my son smile again. That's the thing about storms. They don't last, but they do leave the air a little cleaner, the ground a little softer, and the heart a little stronger. So if you've ever been made to feel like your presence is too much, remember this. You are not a burden. You are a story that's still being written. And someday, the people who misunderstood your weight will realize it was the strength that kept everything from falling apart. Now tell me, if you were in my place, if someone you once called family turned around and called you a burden, would you have stayed and fought for your peace? Or would you have walked away? Let me know down in the comments, my dears. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe so you can sit with me again next Sunday for another story from Voices of Anime. Until then, take care of your peace. It's worth more than any inheritance.